Hello students, today we are going to start with the second chapter of history, that is from trade to territory. Now in this chapter we will see how the British East India Company established its power in India, how it began trade in Bengal, how the trade led to battles. We will also study about the Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. We will also study how the company rule expanded in India and also about a major ruler of that time, that was Tipu Sultan. We will also study about a major policy that was adopted by the Britishers to annex India, that was the doctrine of lapse. So let's start with this chapter. Now Aurangzeb was the last of the powerful Mughal rulers. He established control over a very large period of the territory that is now known as India. After his death in 1707, many Mughal governors, who were known as Subedars and big zamindars, began asserting their authority and establishing regional kingdoms. As powerful regional kingdoms emerged in various parts of India, Delhi could no longer function as an effective center. By the second half of the 18th century, however, a new power was emerging on the political horizon, that is, the Britishers. Now, it is a matter of fact that the British originally came as a small trading company and were reluctant to acquire territories. But then arises the question that how then did they come to be masters of a vast empire? This is what we will study in this chapter. In 1600, the East India Company acquired a charter from the ruler of England, that was Queen Elizabeth I, granting it the sole right to trade with the East. This meant that no other trading group in England could compete with the East India Company. With this charter, the company could venture across the oceans looking for new lands from which it could buy goods at a cheap price and carry them back to sell in Europe at a higher price. The company did not have to fear competition from other English trading companies. Mercantile trading companies in those days made profit primarily by excluding competition so that they could buy cheap and sell dear. Now, mercantile means a business enterprise that makes profit primarily through trade, buying goods cheap and selling them at higher price. The Royal Charter, however, could not prevent other European powers from entering the eastern markets. By the time the first English ships sailed down the west coast of Africa, round the Cape of Good Hope, and crossed the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese had already established their presence in the western coast of India and had their base in Goa. In fact, it was Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, who had discovered this sea route to India in 1498. By the early 17th century, the Dutch too were exploring the possibilities of trade in Indian Ocean. Soon, the French traders also arrived on the scene. Now here, the problem was that all the companies were interested in buying the same things. The fine qualities of cotton and silk produced in India had a big market in Europe. Pepper, cloves, cardamom, and cinnamon too were in great demand in Europe. Competition amongst the European companies inevitably pushed up the prices at which these goods could be purchased, and this reduced the profits that could be earned. The only way the trading companies could flourish was by eliminating the rival competitors. The urge to secure markets therefore led to fierce battles between these trading companies. Through the 17th and the 18th century, they regularly sank each other's ships, blockaded routes, and prevented rival ships from moving with the supplies of goods. Trade was carried on with arms, and trading posts were protected through fortification. Now, this effort to fortify settlements and carry on profitable trade also led to intense conflict with local rulers. The company therefore found it difficult to separate trade from politics. Now, if we talk about how East India Company began trade in Bengal, the first English factory was set up on the banks of the river Hooghly in 1651. This was the base from which the company's traders, known at that time as factors, operated. The factory had a warehouse where goods for export were stored, and it had offices where company officials sat. As trade expanded, the company persuaded merchants and traders to come and settle near the factory. By 1696, it began building a fort around the settlement. 2 years later, it bribed Mughal officials into giving the company zamindari rights over three villages. One of these was Kalikata, which later grew into the city of Calcutta or Kolkata as it is known today. It also persuaded the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb to issue a farman granting the company the right to trade duty free. Now, what does a farman actually mean? Farman is actually a royal edict or a royal order by the king. Now, the company tried continuously to press for more concessions and manipulate existing privileges. Aurangzeb's farman, for instance, had granted only the company the right to trade duty free. But officials of the company who were carrying on private trade on the side were expected to pay duty. This they refused to pay, causing an enormous loss of revenue for Bengal. Now, question arises that how did trade led to battles? Now, through the early 18th century, the conflict between the company and the Nawabs of Bengal intensified. After the death of Aurangzeb, the Bengal Nawabs asserted their power and autonomy as other regional powers were doing at that time. Murshid Quli Khan was followed by Alivardi Khan and then Sirajud-Dowla as the Nawab of Bengal. Each one of them was a very strong ruler. They refused to grant the company concessions, demanded large tributes for the company's right to trade, denied it any right to mint coins, and stopped it from extending its fortifications. Accusing the company of deceit, they claimed that the company was depriving the Bengal government of huge amounts of revenue and undermining the authority of the Nawab. It was refusing to pay taxes, writing disrespectful letters, and trying to humiliate the Nawab and his officials. Now, the company on its part declared that the unjust demands of the local officials were ruining the trades of the company, and trade could flourish only if the duties were removed. It was also convinced that to expand trade, it had to enlarge its settlements, buy up villages, and rebuild its forts. The conflicts led to confrontations and finally culminated in the famous Battle of Plassey. Students, do you know how Plassey got its name? Plassey is an anglicized pronunciation of Palashi, and the place derived its name from the Palash tree, known for its beautiful red flowers that yield gulal, the powder used in the festival of Holi. Now, if we talk about the Battle of Plassey, when Alivardi Khan died in 1756, Siraj-ud-Dowla became the Nawab of Bengal. The company was worried about his power and keen on a puppet ruler who would willingly give trade concessions and other privileges. A puppet ruler means a kind of ruler who will be in control of the Britishers and will work according to their wish. So, The British East India Company tried, though without success, to help one of Sirajuddaulah's rivals become the Nawab. An infuriated Sirajuddaulah asked the company to stop meddling in the political affairs of his dominion, stop fortification, and pay the revenues. After negotiations failed, the Nawab marched with 30,000 soldiers to the English factory at Qasim Bazar, captured the company officials, locked the warehouse, disarmed all Englishmen, and blockaded English ships. Then he marched to Calcutta to establish control over the company's fort there. On hearing the news of the fall of Calcutta, company officials in Madras sent forces under the command of Robert Clive, reinforced by naval fleets. Prolonged negotiations with the Nawab followed. Finally, in 1757, Robert Clive led the company's army against Sirajuddaulah at Plassey. One of the main reasons for the defeat of Nawab was that the forces led by Mir Jafar, one of Sirajuddaullah's commanders, never fought the battle. Clive had managed to secure his support by promising to make him Nawab after crushing Sirajuddaulah. The Battle of Plassey became famous because it was the first major victory of the British East India Company in India. Now, after the defeat at Plassey, Sirajuddaulah was assassinated and Mir Jafar was made the Nawab. The company was still unwilling to take over the responsibility of administration. Its prime objective was the expansion of trade only. But soon, the company discovered that even the puppet Nawabs were not always as helpful as the company wanted them to be. After all, they had to maintain a basic appearance of dignity and sovereignty if they wanted respect from their subjects. When Mir Jafar protested, the company deposed him and installed Mir Qasim in his place. When Mir Qasim complained, he in turn was defeated in a battle fought at Buxar in 1764, driven out of Bengal, and Mir Jafar was reinstalled. The Nawab had to pay rupees 5 lakh every month, but the company wanted more money to finance its wars and meet the demands of the trade and its other expenses. It wanted more territories and more revenue. By the time Mir Jafar died in 1765, the mood of the company had changed. Having failed to work with puppet Nawabs, Clive declared, "We must indeed become Nawabs ourselves." Finally, in 1765, the Mughal emperor appointed the company as the Diwan of the province of Bengal. The Diwani allowed the company to use the vast revenue resources of Bengal. This solved a major problem that the company had earlier faced. From the early 18th century, its trade with India had expanded, but it had to buy most of the goods in India with gold and silver imported from Britain. This was because at this time Britain had no goods to sell in India. The outflow of gold from Britain slowed after the Battle of Plassey and entirely stopped after the assumption of Diwani. Now revenues from India could finance company expenses. These revenues could be used to purchase cotton and silk textiles in India, maintain company troops, and meet the cost of building the company fort and offices at Calcutta. Now, as the company had decided that the company officials should become Nawabs, now it meant that company was planning to acquire more power and authority. But it also meant something else. Each company servant began to have visions of living like Nawabs. After the Battle of Plassey, the actual Nawabs of Bengal were forced to give land and vast sums of money as personal gifts to company officials. Robert Clive himself amassed a fortune in India. He had come to Madras, which is now known as Chennai, from England in 1743 at the age of 18. When in 1767 he left India, His Indian fortune was worth 4,01,102 pounds. Interestingly, when he was appointed Governor of Bengal in 1764, he was asked to remove corruption in company administration, but he himself was cross examined in 1772 by the British Parliament, which was suspicious of his vast wealth. Although he was acquitted, he committed suicide in 1774. However, not all company officials succeeded in making money like Clive. Many died an early death in India due to disease and war, and it would not be right to regard all of them as corrupt and dishonest. Many of them came from humble backgrounds, and their uppermost desire was to earn enough in India, return to Britain, and lead a comfortable life. Those who managed to return with wealth led flashy lives and flaunted their riches. They were called Nawabs, an anglicized version of the Indian word Nawab. They were often seen as upstarts and social climbers in British society and were ridiculed or made fun of in plays and cartoons. So, students, this is it for today. We'll continue with this chapter in the next video. Do study this chapter thoroughly, and if there is any kind of problem, do ask a question in the comment section below this video. अगर कोई भी प्रॉब्लम किसी टॉपिक में है इस चैप्टर में, आप अपने क्वेश्चंस कमेंट सेक्शन में वीडियो के नीचे लिख देना. आई विल आंसर दोज क्वेश्चन फॉर श्योर. थैंक यू.